Yeah, we try not to do only market data because I think that if they're in the mode to buy or sell, they care. But what about those 7 years in between on average people move? Well, I think it's even 5 years now, but still, how do I say relevant in their life for the next 5 years before they buy or sell so that they reach out to me when it's time? And so for us, it's, on our consumer stuff, it's very localized. Here, yes, there maybe it's a little bit of real estate.
We're live on Facebook, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I've got some amazing friends with me, and they're all way smarter than me, so I'm excited to talk to them. I've got Mike Bernier, and in no order, because I think Keri's the smartest, but Mike Bernier, Keri Shull, and Saul Klein, who's on here, but he's on his phone, and for some reason, his camera is not working, but we'll get it to work. For now, welcome everybody. Mike, where are you coming in from?
Coming from Minesota, and I do agree. I think Keri probably is the smartest, but I live in a state that's negative 30 degrees at times, so that disqualifies me from that statement
Instantly.
right away. Yeah,
Keri, what's up? Where are you coming in from?
I'm in Arlington, Virginia right now.
Nice. Thank you. And Saul, you can hear us. Where are you coming in from, buddy?
Well, I'm in San Diego. That's where I stay most of the time nowadays,
I love it, man. You go way back in San Diego, and I'm in Los Angeles / Ventura County. I'm in the borderline, so I get to do business in both. But let's talk about what's happening, because we're hearing a lot of speculation coming from the media, a lot of speculation coming from, and when I'm talking about the media, I'm talking about just the traditional media. And then a lot of speculation coming in from social media, which if you look back to 2007, coming into 2008, a lot of these platforms weren't fully taking off yet, right?
Right.
We had the beginning of Facebook, the beginning of Instagram, if at that, and YouTube was barely getting up and growing. But now it's like, now we can get news from YouTubers that think they know what the hell's going on. And maybe a TikToker or two that are telling us we're going to get foreclosures. And I'm looking at this and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is just based on emotion. It's all speculation. So what do you guys see happening? I'm going to go to Keri first, just in your market and to the market that you can talk to. What are you seeing happening?
Well, I have been referring to some of the comments as wind-up dolls, because you have all these people that are running around, and none of the statistics match what they're saying at all. We're still seeing days on market extremely low, 16 days. We're still seeing prices increase month over month, 4% increase. So we have a massive shortage of inventory still, right? Except if you listen to the wind-up dolls running around town, like foreclosures are popping out of the woodwork. Not true. There's still multiple offers on a lot of the listings that we have. And people are like, oh my God, it's an emergency when something's on the market for 4 days. Guys, we're heading towards a little bit of normalcy here. Some of the agents are like, I got to pack my suitcase and, go find another job. And I'm like, hold on a minute, take a deep breath. This is all about getting a little bit of skill. And by the way, great news. It's actually going to be easier for you as an agent if it's a little more normal, because a lot of bad agents are going to get out. They are going to go packing. And the agents that are good, and this is my perspective, it's actually kind of pleasant to have a home or two to show a client who wants to buy a house, right? So my feeling is we're not heading towards a crisis. There's just not enough housing. And if you look at statistics, it'll show you that, right?
I mean, let's take a look at Arlington through Altos. We all love Altos. And this is week to week. So this is actually the most relevant information that we get. So A lot of the NAR stats are like a month and a half behind. This is a week behind, which is really good.
Yep.
So we take a look at the stats that you're talking about with days on market and median days on market. That's still significantly low.
Oh, it's
And-
massively low. And if you incorporate DC in there, it drops even more.
Yeah, and then look at the rent. I mean, geez, it's steadily gone up, right? A little bit of a dip, and then it looks like it's heading back up again. So
Well, and what's happening on the rental side? And I live in Florida, for those of you who don't know that, and my business is in Arlington. And so what I'm seeing in both of those markets, people are starting on the leasing side. When they're going to rent a place, they're having to bid above the rental amount to even be considered for a rental right now. So
whoa.
it's
Wait,
it's
Are
crazy.
you what part of Florida?
Am I licensed in Florida?
No. Where do you live in Florida?
Deerfield Beach,
Deerfield. Where close? What is that close to?
Boca.
Boca. Nice.
It's like in between West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale.
Nice.
Florida's little secret beach town.
That sounds nice. I like that. I
Heavenly.
like that. I'll take the frizzy hair any day for that.
Yes.
Mike, what are you seeing out in Minnesota, man?
First off, what I wanted to touch on was I think agents, anytime they sense anything that changes, it automatically puts a little bit of fear and anxiety. Agents don't typically love change. And I don't want to generalize, but let's just face it, people like things that are consistent and normal. So, we find ourselves in this market that all we're hearing is the market shifting, it's crashing, it's changing. I've heard the word shift and crash interchangeable so many times. And, when you get a group of people like real estate agents that are already, not really a big, advocate of change, sensing change, if they, and Keri touched on it, they put a house on the market, it's not gone in 3 minutes. And all of a sudden, holy crap, what's going on? There's something wrong with the market. Everything's changing. Right. But all I see is opportunity in it. For us, we're seeing, a 7.5% decline or so statewide, a number of transactions year to date. But a lot of that doesn't have to do with the fact that there's no buyers. Again, we still have record low inventory, and we're starting to get an uptick of inventory in certain pockets in the state. I think it's great. I watched agents have severe anxiety every time they had to write an offer. It was like they would shake. Oh my God, I have to write another one. Please don't make me do it. Now we're actually going back, and when you say normal, it reminds me again, of a 2018, 2019. Sort of a normal pace where you're getting a couple offers per property. Perhaps they last, another week or two longer. Maybe you got a shot to actually lead generate off your own listing. Maybe you should actually host an open house. To me, there's opportunity in it. Yep. But, again, the problem is there's so much misinformation. And when you're having, a certain sector come out very pessimistic saying everything's going to crash, the economy's going down, it's not just real estate, everything is going to fall apart, it trickles into real estate. It gets really easy if you're not careful to really subscribe to that. We still have an excessive demand problem. I think we do very much all over the country. I think the one thing that I would state, the caveat to this, the person that's really being squeezed out, you talked about rental rates are phenomenal. They're just so high. Purchase rates are so high. It's the first time home buyer. When you're looking at metrics like the affordability index, that it's in a place right now I've never in my 22-year career ever seen it. I mean, it's very hard for the average first time home buyer to get into the market. So I can see that there's a problem there, but it's not a problem of, excessive inventory crashing, markets dipping. It's actually quite the opposite. It's scarcity with high price. So
I have a question about that to you, and
Yeah.
anybody can answer it. Does owning a home then for most people become more of a commodity and not just open to everyone at that point?
It's funny when you say that, because I recently said to a friend of mine who's in the business, she was like, I'm thinking I'm going to sell one of my homes. She has a vacation home that she could live in permanently. She's got a primary residence. I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I'll ever sell a home again. It feels to me like it's such a commodity and privilege at this point. It's so hard for people to get back into it once they're out. And it's more affluent buyers able to afford it, unless we start going to 50-year mortgages like some countries. I don't know that it's going to be real easy for just the average person to get in anymore.
I'll take a 50-year mortgage, dude.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
50-year mortgages are terrible. 30-year mortgages are no good. 20-year mortgages really have the best benefit from an amortization schedule. One of the reasons you have default and foreclosures, you got a 30-year mortgage. and there's
Mhm.
not enough time in the cycle to let people build equity. So
Mhm.
Whole thing.
look at,
Yep.
just do a comparison sometime and look at how many more payments you have to make and how much money. So that the answer is not in my mind,
No.
longer amortization periods.
And I wasn't advocating for it. I was just stating, I just don't see a way that, as these prices keep climbing and, there's scarcity of inventory. So many institutional investors gobbled up so much inventory in the last couple of years. New construction home starts, those are completely different from what they were 3-4 years ago. The cost just to build a home, the communities now that are pushing builders out because they don't want new construction in there. It's tough. It's tough for people to get in the game right now.
I see that.
Tristan,
Saul, what do you think, buddy?
Let me talk to your question of all the misinformation. So you're right. Social media hadn't been around that long. Really, online communities since probably around 1969, and the first real estate community really didn't get created until 1994, and that was Real Talk, and that was a listserv, right? And so this whole idea of community really has taken a number of years, and it's taken off with the social media platforms, which was really Web 2.0, which allowed engagement. Prior to that, you didn't have engagement. The underlying tech stack didn't allow that. Web 2.0 allowed that. You had this tech stack that allowed that, right? It was the LAMP stack, Linux, Apache, MySQL, and Python Perl. So that allowed the interaction. Now you got people talking about Web 0.3, but here's what happens. When people get in and they start communicating, they start engaging, I got these different phenomena. One I call is not always right, but never in doubt. And so you've got people on, and you see it. They're never in doubt, right? But they're not always right, but they're never in doubt. You can't argue, you can't spend time, you can't make, not always right, but never in doubt. Then another one I use, saves me lots of time, is who's the greater fool, the village idiot or the person who argues with the village idiot? And so there is all this disinformation and there is all this. And so I think it's critical when people are taking advice online, look at the people whose advice you're taking. Take the time to look at who they are. Take the time to look at their background. Take a look at how long they've been doing it, how successful they've been at doing it. And then that'll give you a little bit better idea of how to weigh that information that you're getting from this variety of sources. Now, on the market itself, this is the 5th recession that I've seen. I got my broker's license in 1977. I got my sales license in 1975. I've seen these things come and go. I've seen them from different perspectives, from being an agent to being a broker, to being a manager, to owning technology companies, and they come and go. And people do, and this is an industry where people wash out anyway. You could have a great economy, and at the end of the year, about 1/3 of the people would be gone, and you'd have a new. So there always is this turnover, right?
So would you mind? I'd like to add to that point. So what we saw in our state association is we're starting to see attrition of people leaving faster than they're joining. For the first time in a while, we're actually seeing people going, down, or states going down a number of new agents. I think NAR lost a pretty big, significant bunch of people in the first quarter that they did not replace this year. And I know last year in 2021, one of the most searched Google searches of how to become a realtor. That was about the top how-to search.
It's always been, but it's always been that way.
Yeah.
Right? So I remember predicting when we had 785,000 realtors and technology was entering the scene, and we said technology is going to replace realtors, right? Realtors use technology are going to replace realtors who don't. And we thought that the realtor population would go to 350,000. It went to over 1 million. I think it's still at 1.4 million. We know that those people don't sell real estate. We know that the number, right? That number is not a real people involved in sales number. It's people in the real estate industry. But if you look at that number, it's still a big number, and we're going to keep losing people, but the economy is not good and getting worse. But that's okay. That always happens. And when that happens, you're absolutely right, Mike. What it creates are opportunities, and people need to look to it. Now we're going to see major land use changes in this country over the next couple of years. That's going to create opportunity. And so there's all kinds of new things, and being abreast of the situation is really critical. But again, you got to go back and kind of look at, you got a lot of people giving advice on the internet. So you got to be real careful about whose advice you take, right?
And I think it's great too, when you're not just listening to one source and taking it as gospel. If you're, as an agent, it'd be smart to listen to multiple sources, figure out what do you think is right, form your own thoughts on things. I think a lot of people hear one person talk and they're like, that's it, the market's crashing, I'm out. You've got to be a little bit more comprehensive than that.
Well, and crash is hyperbole, and real estate is local.
Mhm.
And so, and when we talk about, inflation, that's a general statement, right? And so certain things, like I don't drive very much anymore, right? For the last couple of years, I've been kind of at my age, right? I'm kind of like, doesn't matter to me. So the gasoline prices don't affect me personally. Now they do because they have to truck the food in, and right. So there's all these different factors. And so when people talk in such generality, it is hyperbole. And what we know is good times, bad times, people buy and sell real estate. Like I said, I've lived through these before, bought and sold real estate. So the real question people have today, I think, is they're afraid, and should I buy now? Are we at the top of the market? All right. That's the kind of the heartache that we have. And for me, I look at it and say, people always buy and sell real estate. Interest rates are still low. I mean, you're absolutely right, Keri. You mentioned, you did too, Mike, because we have an inventory problem. We're about 3 to 4 million units short. It's going to take many, many years. So even if interest rates continue to escalate, there's still a shortage of inventory. So everybody I talk to says that they don't expect prices to drop dramatically. Now, you know what? In some areas they might, and in some, right?
But generally, you're talking more of a de-escalation of appreciation. We're talking not about necessarily negative price growth, but just a de-escalation. Maybe we'll see price growth of 3% a year rather than 15 or 20. I mean, we're talking about a slowdown, which we probably need.
No, there's no doubt. We not only do we need it, because part of it has been stimulated by all the capital that's been pushed into the marketplace over the last 10 years. So if they throw trillions and trillions of dollars in, and they keep throwing trillions of dollars being added to the money supply, it's going to drive up the cost of things.
Of course.
Right.
Well, so we had a when things actually did crash in 2008, we had a problem. We had a dirty money problem. That was our problem back then. We had dirty, bad money, which fueled the crisis that happened. Right now, we had a cheap money problem. We had a almost free money problem, that it was so cheap and so affordable to get into housing. And that, again, talking about inflation, that drove the prices of houses up so rapidly, on top of other factors. But I'm saying, like, for the interest rates to rise, for things to level out a little bit, for affordability to change a little bit, for the rapid growth of appreciation to slow, I don't think that's a bad thing. I think it's a normal.
I don't think so either.
It's
healthy.
Right. There have been artificial factors that have pushed this. Now, 2008 is part of the reason that we've got an issue. And 2008, the problem really was no transparency with regard to risk, and people were buying loans. We got to look at see, that's a whole nother thing. People don't understand how the finance system works in this country. People don't know how housing finance works in this country. It's not just I can go down to the bank and get a loan. I'll go get a loan. Well, wait a minute. Where did the money come from? There's an amazingly complex financial system that raises private capital and government insurance. And it's amazing if you get into it, how complex it is. And we had a problem in 2008 because we didn't have enough transparency. There was too much risk. We had a lot of stuff being dumped, and there are people I talk to that aren't certain we don't have some of the same sorts of problems with the GSEs, with Fannie and Freddie, with the loans that are bought in the secondary market, with the too much risk being taken. We could certainly see it worse than a lot of people think. That just opens opportunities.
Oh, there's a good point on that, because we also are seeing the type of loans that are being given to accredited investors that are going in and purchasing short-term rentals because they're using the future income of these short-term rentals as the qualification to jump in and purchase these homes. So we are definitely seeing that as well, but we're also not taking into account Airbnb wasn't around the last time, right?
There's more demand for the product, right?
There's a lot more, because now you're seeing corporations just buy up sections, and chances are some of these homes will never come back on the market.
Well, so you've got the iBuyer situation, you've got investors, because residential real estate's an asset class now that makes sense for people, right? So you got that portion of the market being purchased. You've got the interest rate situation. Here's what I think is going to happen. You're right. First-time buyers are being frozen out of the market. I think the opportunity lies ahead in fractionalization, in Bitcoin as an underlying technology. I might not be able to buy a whole house when I'm 20 years old, like I could when I was 20 years old, but maybe I can buy a piece of a house and buy fractionalized pieces of houses. And someday I'll have enough equity in those fractionalized pieces. I might now be 30 when I buy my first house, or 40. I mean, I don't know how this is going to work, but there are new opportunities being opened up, and we're going to see different kinds of liquidity in the future. So I'm short term. I'm not negative on this. I'm seeing that there's going to be a slowdown. I'm positive on a slowdown,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Well, so
And
with this in mind, I think the way that agents need to address this, because we're all feeling the same way, right? When you're talking to the first-time home buyer that's faced with the fact that what they thought they could afford, their buying power has gone down. We need to help them understand the opportunity that exists by still getting in the market.
Yep.
And when I train my team on how to talk to first-time home buyers about this, or any buyers about it, if they're trying to decide, should I buy or should I rent? The only decision that we are 100% confident is a loss right now is the $2,000, or in the case of Arlington, the $4,000 a month that they're going to sink into a rental. I mean, at minimum, if you look at 1 year, is it going to get better in a year that they're going to feel like they've had the opportunity to put more money away to be in a better position to buy if they're going to put $24,000 in their landlord's pocket or $48,000 in the, no. For most of them, they are only going to be in a worse situation. And guess who controls the stability of their income and how it works with their housing? Their landlord. Where if they buy, even if there's a temporary, like people are saying, oh, the market's tanking. Like, I don't believe that's true. The statistics don't support that that's true. But let's just imagine for a moment their biggest fear were true. Is it better to have someone control what you can afford to rent that's a landlord that's going to take full advantage of the opportunity to increase the rent? It's 25% on average in my area that it's gone up. So if that's the case and you're deciding whether to buy or rent, wouldn't you rather lock in your housing payment?
yeah,
It doesn't make sense to me why the question is it's all fear-based. It's not based on facts.
and interest rates are still low.
They
right?
are.
So yeah, it's unfortunate that certain people that qualified last year don't qualify this year. That's really, and interest rates are still low, and there's a shortage of property. And so any de-escalation of prices isn't going to take place overnight, if there is any at all, because as you mentioned, we're inventory shy, right? We don't have enough inventory.
And they'll say, what if the price goes down? Well, hold on a minute. If you put $24,000 into rents, that gives you the opportunity for a reduction of $24,000. And when you look at it, it's just not logical that the reduction would be more than what they're going to sink into rent.
Plus, you're getting equity buildup as you pay the loan down, which you don't get on a rental property, right?
Yes.
And if you do a 20-year loan instead of a 30-year loan, you get good equity buildup. And so you're right. There's all these advantages. People lose sight of because they get lost in the emotion, as Tristan said, of the moment.
Well, and they're committed to having the same exact lifestyle. And I think it's time for us to take a step back and decide what our commitment is really about. Are we committed to having brand new countertops and brand new cabinets and being in the exact location that we want? Or are we committed to setting ourselves up for our financial future?
Yeah, that's the priority. That's the life's priorities questions, right?
Yes.
Right. And people need to ask themselves that for sure.
So Keri, I don't want to glaze over something that you're kind of alluding to, because I think this is really, really important, especially for the agents that are listening. I think some of the problems they're having, they don't know exactly what they're supposed to do to shift into. They know something's changing, but what do I do? And maybe the conversations have changed a little bit that are really necessary. Maybe the conversation needs to be more about education. Maybe it's not, hey, I can sell your house for top dollar, or I can help you find one. Maybe there's more education, because if the agents are confused by what's going on, imagine what the public is feeling,
Right.
And I think we have to keep in mind, the other thing you're talking about is, it's still life events often that drive people to move. You're talking about, death, divorce, marriages, babies, downsizing, all the things that helps or makes people have a life event that makes them actually want to get up and move. Do I rent? Which, by the way, when you're looking at the rental rates and how that correlates to housing pricing, that's a whole nother conversation we could have. But quite honestly, we have to step back and have some solid education, and on top of that, solid solutions for people. So we have the right conversations. And I think our agents are kind of missing that step. They don't know what conversation to have.
Right.
No, it's interesting because every once in a while I try to bring that up. I participate probably in 16 or 17 different social media groups and have been doing this since the 90s. And I get this from agent I try to write it in a way that we're not giving people specific advice. We're giving them generalities that they need to know. And I hear people say all the time, I stay in my lane. Have you ever heard that? Oh, I don't get out of my lane. So I'm not asking you to get out of your lane. I'm asking you to learn something because it'll help people. But if you get that same thing, that people think that to learn about the economy and to talk about it is somehow getting out of your lane, or to understand taxes and how they might affect the sale of a residential property, it's somehow getting out of your lane. And I don't see it that way.
Oh, I think that is just totally bullshit. I think it's insecurity.
Yeah.
And if we as agents don't step up our game and help address the root cause of the fear that the public is facing, we don't deserve to be a real estate agent. And we're certainly not going to have a thriving business, because we'll have to be able to speak to the client's fear and help reposition their thinking towards what they want in life. Yeah. That's the reason that they're picking us right now. That's the way to really embed confidence in them in a period where they're terrified.
Well, that's why we always say knowledge is power, and that an informed consumer is a better consumer. You want your clients to understand. You don't want them totally to rely on what you say. You want them to investigate. And so you want to be able to talk about these things. And again, not to be able to say, give me all the specifics of your deal and I'll tell you what your tax consequence is on your 1031 tax deferred exchange. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, say, if you sell a residential property, you get tax benefit. Here's the kind of benefits you get. When there's inflation, here's the general kinds of things, right? I mean, those kinds of conversation, you know what they do too? They demonstrate expertise. And when you demonstrate expertise, you build trust and confidence. And if you don't have trust and confidence, you're not going to get them to sign a contract, right? So there's power in these conversations with your clients.
You know what, too? I think the reality of it is real estate agents don't like to look dumb to their clients. If we just start there, a lot of times they actually, that freaks them out. So the level of confidence they feel they need to have often in order to really step forward and say, here, let me tell you something. Let me teach you something. Let me show you something. I've watched so many agents, countless agents, get so tied up in their own head and get that whole paralysis by analysis thing going that they just don't say a thing because they're not confident enough in what they're saying. So you're 1,000% right, Saul. When the agents that can separate themselves from the herd out of that sea of sameness with every other agent on the planet, that can step forward as a true educator, a true consultant. When we talk about opportunity, that's what this is right here. It's right. True opportunity to be different. And you can never measure yourself as an agent. I will say this: you can never measure yourself as an agent out of the market we just came into. How many times do you see somebody post something on Facebook? I sold a listing in 3 minutes for 40 grand over. No, you didn't. The house sold itself. Everybody's is doing the same thing. That doesn't, you get a false sense of security that you're better than you are, right? So this is a time that you can actually really measure yourself, push yourself out of your comfort zone, look different than everybody else out there by the information and education you're giving. And that's where I really want to drive agents to in their thought process. Stop worrying so much about looking stupid, having egg in your face. Just get out there, learn, and keep talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as this rolls forward, the industry is changing, and the role of and we always talk, what is the role of a real estate agent? What are the skill sets that are required? And so really it's more of a consultative role is where all this, and it's been rolling this way for a long time, but that's what people have to, you're more in the consultative role. Your job is to put the information about real estate in the context of your client's life. Because anybody can go out and gather information, but you're going to help them put that information into the context of their life. And that takes some doing, and that takes some knowledge and experience. And that's a value. And we're moving more towards that. And the technology is going to drive us more towards that over the next couple of years.
And I think a lot of the order takers, the professional door openers, they're already really struggling right now because what people they need somebody they can trust. You have to have enough influence, number one, to get them to trust you. And I think you have to be confident enough in what you're saying to get them to trust you. You don't always have to be 100%, right? Nobody ever is. But like I said, I think the important thing is to get in the mindset that I'm actually going to give some higher level, more valuable content to my consumer base. That's going to separate you as an agent.
That is, guys. That is. Look, we're at the top of the 30 minutes here. I love our conversation. I think we could have gone for another hour.
Probably.
I don't mind doing this more often if I can get all of us together at the same time. So let's plan on doing this a little more often too, as the market shifts.
I like the idea of staying ahead of this, helping agents know what they should be looking at, what their talking points should be, where to find solid information to share with others. I mean, those are all things I'm pretty passionate about with real estate agents. I'm in anytime you guys want to do it.
Yeah, I got a lot of time. I stay home most of the time.
All right.
I love it.
Well, Saul, you and your gas price thing, I drive a diesel, buddy. I'll trade you.
Let me tell you a diesel story. In 1979, 1980 was another one of these crashes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Fuel went through the roof. California, odd even. You can only get fuel on certain days. I was selling real estate. I was driving around, and those were the days when you were a real estate mortician. You threw people in the back of your car, you drove them around till they were dead.
Yep.
So it was so expensive. And so I bought an American Oldsmobile 98, brand new, internal combustion engine, converted to a diesel, got another 50-gallon tank put in the back so I could get 100 gallons at a time. And I would drive to Tijuana and buy diesel fuel for 19 cents a gallon. And that would last for a whole month. So recessions can change your habits.
Mm-hmm, they can. Like, right? I'm thinking, I heard Tristan was showing houses on a Vespa. I mean, that's cool.
My dad had a Vespa. Boy.
That's so good. All right, guys.
All right. See you guys.
Let's shift it out. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.